This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectators, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
What's going on, spectators, and welcome to the latest episode of Spectales. My name is Jake, and I like cake. His name is Jesus, and he has a beard. He may also like cake. I'm not sure myself, and it's one of life's great mysteries. He definitely could like cake. We will actually never know. We'll just never get the answer to that question. So, what's going on, Jesus?
I like cake. That's the answer.
You got to read the finer notes here. In the notes, I said, do not say you like cake, Jesus.
I'm not an animal, man. Especially, okay, let's say I don't like cake, but there's only one cake that I do like, and it's Three Milks cake. If anybody knows about Three Milks, the Three Milks cake. So,
you're throwing off my entire rhythm for this entire opening. I had this whole plan out. I said, Jesus, don't say you like cake. It's supposed to be a big mystery. The listeners were I wanted them to start messaging us on Instagram, about, hey, I'm trying to figure out if Jesus likes cake. And
it's impossible. I can't do that. There's no way for me to do that. And then I start getting, you know what? I misplayed this. I could have said, you'll never know. And then I can just start getting random cakes. And then that would have been better because I love cake.
Well, what you'll never know is if Jesus likes cake more than comics. Don't answer that.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I won't answer that one.
If this is your first time joining us for Spectales, thank you so much for giving us a listen. Spectales is a comic book podcast that asks collectors and creators, what's your grail tale? Each week, we explore news stories about the comic book grails we love, the epic journeys behind how they were obtained, and how they inspired new creativity.
We also dive into some comic book speculation and how, as collectors, we can help the hobby pay for itself.
This week, everybody, Jesus and I are shamelessly proclaiming that we knew our guest before he was comic book famous. And we can even prove it because he was a guest on our show way back in January of 2022, episode 26 to be exact for everybody looking. And that was way before his extremely successful Kickstarter campaign. And he is currently on the cusp of his second very successful Kickstarter campaign for the ongoing series Sanity, Rise of the Occult. He is our good friend, Mickey Finnegan, also known as Swagglehaus Comics. Mickey, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on once again. It's great to be back. I'd like to make a point that I hate cake. I do not want to eat it ever. I will say I do like the other kind of cake, the more pejorative version.
Oh, yes.
Cake by the ocean?
Talking about.
Yes, that's so, there must be some confusion because that's the same cake that I was talking about. That's the same cake.
Yeah.
I was talking about chocolate cake.
Oh, I was talking about that one too.
I was thinking more of like a Rihanna song.
Oh, okay.
But man, Swags, welcome back, man. Episode 26. I didn't know it was that long ago. It seems like just yesterday we're talking to you. And
2 years. It's been 2 years.
It's been 2 years, man. And how things have changed from not only just a comic book community standpoint, but from also, like Jake mentioned, you're a comic book writer now, man. You got a comic book out there. You put something in the oven and you let it cook and then it came out. And now it's out. Your baby's out in the world, man. And now you're making another one.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. It's been a passion project, and I'm super thrilled that the response has been good, and that at least for the last Kickstarter we got funded, and this one is also going to be funded. So I feel really fortunate that there's people out there that are supporting it, and yeah, 2 years, man. I mean, isn't it crazy? Like we all kind of started our content creation comic book journeys, and I don't know if it feels like this for you guys, but I feel like I'm getting at the point where I've been doing it long enough where I feel like the cycles have repeated themselves. Like we've had up stuff, down stuff, comic books that got really hot and then went away and then they came back again. And it feels like, why is this hot again? we just kind of lived it. And it's kind of an interesting sort of front row seat into, I guess, the comic book speculation world.
Oh, for sure, man. For sure. And that also, at least for me, begs the question, because I've been collecting since, wow, 2010 or 11 is when I put my finger on when I started collecting. And yeah, you see a lot of cycles, but do you think, because I still consider myself young in the comic book collecting game. I don't have every grail that I want or things of that nature, and I still like to hunt. But enough of these cycles is what gets people jaded, you think? Is that what it is? Or what gets people to those, gatekeeper status where they just don't want anybody else, encroaching on their spec books?
That's a good question. I feel like, I think that there's new people going in and out of the hobby all the time. I think it actually probably is pretty transient. Like, people go in, they go hard for maybe 2 to 3 years, and then they kind of fall out of it, and life catches up with them. And eventually a couple years pass, and then they see the new whatever movie, and they go, oh yeah. And they kind of think, oh, let me get back into this, or they go back to the comic shop. So I just kind of feel like there's a revolving door all the time. And that leads to people sometimes, like you said, getting jaded, if they've kind of been through the cycle many times. And that sort of leads also other people who haven't been churned to have seen the comers and goers, and maybe they feel a more ownership than the new people that come in. So that, like you said, they kind of do the gatekeeping thing. So yeah, it's just it's an interesting kind of ever changing cycle of collectors that come in and out.
I have a theory on that, if either of you are interested in hearing it. Going back to when I really got into Batman New 52, and Scott Snyder was writing God to me at that time. I still love Scott Snyder as a writer, for everybody listening. But the thing is after he wasn't writing anymore, right? So and he was also on Swamp Thing. He was on, I believe, the first 10 issues of Swamp Thing. And after that, I read a couple of issues. I was like, this isn't as good. And I truly wonder, because when Scott Snyder was no longer writing, like on the series that I was like, I fell off. That's when me as a reader fell off. And I wonder if, like, for another maybe more recent example would be like when the first arc of Something is Killing the Children ended. I know a lot of people that read that first arc, and everybody said this is the greatest series of the last decade. Everybody has to read it. I have not heard the same recommendations from people for the next. I mean, I think we're almost 3 arcs in now for Something is Killing the Children. But I still pick it up. It's still on my pull list, but I don't hear the same people. And I personally am not going out and telling people, you got to read this, it's so good. And I wonder if that cycle of readers, collectors, also coincides with sort of the people when they're writing on something. You kind of fall off when it's done, and you leave, and then you come back and you find something new that you hadn't read before, or that somebody else, because you just, for me personally, I've gotten stuck in ways of reading where I know what my pull list is, and I'm not as exploratory as maybe I was before. I get a lot of recommendations from listeners of the show, which is really great because they do all of the legwork. All I do is say, hey, that's a good book. Okay, I'll go read it. Or Jesus is also so good about reading everything and then telling me what's good. But right, I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, is it the cycle of when these storylines kind of come to an end and people fall off because they don't get invested in the next one?
I'll let Mickey answer here, and then I have a follow up, I guess, to it too.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think I myself am definitely somebody who follows more writers than, say, specific artists. And I think you kind of get in rhythms with certain people's writing styles, especially when it's like teamed up with a certain character and you're like, oh, I like this flow. Like, if we're talking superheroes, for instance. Yep. So I think people get kind of invested in that. And yeah, once the creative team turns over, maybe you feel like, oh, the people that the team you were following or whatever is not quite what it used to be. And I think that there's actually something to back this up, in terms of, I've had some conversations with retailers, and one of the things that they've always said is that obviously rebooting new number one issues is a big deal to spike sales for, new comic series and things like that. But you'll talk to retailers, they always say, every time a series turns over to a new number one, if somebody is on that series previously and it was in their pull list, like selling that customer to re-up on the new series is always like an uphill battle. And I think that kind of goes to what you're saying, where, I think the people who are invested would rather just kind of carry on with a creative team. And once it gets rebooted to a number one, ironically, while it is a new beginning, it kind of feels like the perfect ending for someone who is following it.
A jumping off point, if you will, right? And to that end, there's been a lot of conversation around for creators around miniseries versus ongoing. A lot of publishers right now don't really want ongoing for the most part. They want miniseries, something that's quick, 4, 5, 6 issues that they can put in a trade. And it's from the risk standpoint, right? It's from the risk standpoint because, the number one issues, they sell a lot, and then everybody knows that there's drop off, right? And that drop off is what becomes your true reader base. But if you have only 5 issues, then that drop off gets significantly less because the reader knows that it's only 5 issues, 6 issues, what have you. I think The Last Ronin was kind of a good insight into that. I think a good model for that, I guess, of what the publishers saw at that time, even though there was a lot of variant covers, which was another way to kind of juice that story. But yeah, I mean, I personally read to issue 20 of Something That's Killing the Children, and I haven't read anything after that. I know I have them probably here in some of the boxes. I think I have up to like 26 or something like that.
I think they're on it. Like, are they at like 35 now?
Yeah, they're in I think they're in the 30s already, if I'm not mistaken. So, but I haven't read them, right? I haven't felt compelled to or the need to. I think part of that too is also some fatigue with it as far as the excitement that it got optioned and that it was going to be Netflix and the A-Team, and then the strike happened and, we lost some of that because there is genuine interest and genuine excitement about seeing something adapted that you enjoyed reading and during the time you enjoyed reading it, right? During the pandemic. And now it's up in the air. Like, I recently got excited about 8 Billion Genies again because it came out that it's going to happen as a movie now that it's Seth Rogen making it. And that's good. That's good for the comic community. That's good for the reader. But when they die, when those options die, then there's not a lot of motivation unless the people that you trust are telling you, hey, you need to read this. He's doing something cool. He's doing something different. By he, I mean the writer or the writing team or the creative team is doing something different that you haven't seen before, And so unless we get that word of mouth or you get that, quick mini series or what have you, then I think the readership has changed from 80s and 90s ongoing series to more arcs, mini series, things of that nature, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing out there, from what I'm hearing, some of my fellow readers. So I think that's the difference that we're seeing right now.
I appreciate both of your opinions on that. I think that we're going to continue to see, as Mickey said earlier on, like that we've been in this weirdly long enough, right? Like 2 years ago was when, Mickey, you were first on, and we've been doing the comic conversation, in which I know on your YouTube, you really keep that conversation going, and you're talking about the current events so much on your show. And I love the conversations, and you get into deep dives with like our friend Ryan, who is so damn smart and educated when it comes to especially Golden Age comics. If the title Golden Age Guru hadn't already been taken, I think Ryan would have gained it just naturally.
Maybe it's a mantle.
Yeah, maybe it's a mantle.
Pass the torch, Jeff. Pass it on to Ryan.
But I do think that flow within the comic buyers, obviously, like Jesus is pointing out, is impacting the writers and the creators on that side of the table, and it will continue to flow, right? The same as the 90s were different than the aughts, and the aughts were different than the teens, and that's gonna continue to ebb and flow, and at one point there's just going to be a giant event, where there's going to be a giant onslaught character that kills everybody all over again. and we'll reset and it'll be fun. But for us, gentlemen, let's move into our first segment because I think it's really going to lead into a great conversation. No spoilers, but spoilers about what Mickey's been working on since we last had him on the show. But first, I have to, of course, press this button.
Recent pickups.
That's right, the recent pickup segment. Jesus traditionally goes first, and good news for him. I already know what he's going to talk about. But Jesus, why don't you tell the listeners here, the good people at home, what you'd like to talk about?
I get to talk about this really cool comic book that I'm holding in my hands. It's a #1, like we talked about. And I actually have a variant. I don't even know which variant or which one is the variant, but it's Sanity, Rise of the Occult, #1 by Mickey Finnegan and Santiago Espina. And I have these two. Which one is the... I know we're not a video, but which one is?
That's the cover. The first one you showed me was the A cover, and then the second one you showed me is that's one of the variants right there.
Well, Jesus, one of those is mine, right? Because that was the show supporting that original Kickstarter.
Why don't you go ahead and send me your address, and then I will be sure to put it in the mail. But yeah, man, I get to talk about it. I've had it for a while. There's a lot of swag that you put on here too, which I thought was really cool. So one of the things that came with it, I don't know if it's at a backer level or what have you, but this really cool that's part it's what would you call this, like a
sort of a vintage kind of movie poster,
a vintage movie poster that's the movie's actually inside of the comic books. And I love when people do that. I love when you can tie something outside of the comic book into something you get. And then on the back of it is also a sketch, which is pretty dope as well.
Yeah, that was just the first kind of exploration with my artist of like, okay, what does this character look like? And so that was his first stab at it.
Yeah, so this is pretty dope, man. So as far as the comic book itself, it's noir, 1930s Los Angeles, super dope. The artwork is really cool, and it's a mystery, right? It reminded me a lot of what's that show on HBO with like the North Shore? What's it called? The detective one.
Yes,
Perry
I know
Mason?
Perry Mason.
Perry Mason.
Yes, Perry Mason. I mean, literally, man. If you're a Perry Mason fan, which I am, this book is with horror and Cthulhu in all throughout.
Lovecraftian. It's
Lovecraftian. Yeah, it's Lovecraftian. It's really dope, man. And it's also for me, as the reader, I get frustrated, but also it's a sign of good writing is the cliffhanger. So definitely cliffhanger here, which makes me want to read more. And that's why we have Mickey on as well to talk about the rest of this story. But this is my recent pickup. I had it since it came out, but I wanted to talk about it because we have not had a chance to talk about it. And here we are getting a chance to talk about it. So for me, one of the first questions I have for you on this as a creator is how long, because I know, we all have, stories we want to tell and things of that nature. How long has this story, been percolating for you?
Yeah, thank you for saying all those things, by the way. And yeah, I'm honored that you supported it, and I'm sure you will get Jake his copy very soon.
I'm gonna overnight it, guys. Yeah. I'm gonna overnight it.
Yeah, but I started this project. I'd say probably back in like 2022 was when I started it. So it of course started with me thinking about, hey, I want to tell a story. I want to write a comic book. Maybe people don't know this who watch my YouTube, but outside my YouTube, I'm in Los Angeles. I work in film. I do a lot of screenwriting for video games, and I've worked on like D&D and Magic and all these kind of properties. So I'm like a big fan of genre storytelling, fantasy and horror and sci-fi. And also on my YouTube, I'm a big vintage collector, and even though I don't have tons of Golden Age books, not quite like Ryan, our friend Automatic does, but I am a big fan of that stuff. And so, comic books have sort of built their roots and their foundation off of those like classic detective stories, the pulp stuff from the 30s. And for me, creating Sanity was kind of putting those two loves together and just saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool to kind of bring it back to the roots of comics and try to do like that noir detective Perry Mason story and add some sci-fi horror Lovecraft elements into it and do my own spin on it. And that was kind of the launch point for me thinking like, okay, this could be a cool thing to do. So I started the writing in 2022 and, just like you could imagine, started jotting some things in a Google Doc, eventually started to piece together, what it could be and where it would go. And then eventually went to coffee shops and looked at blinking cursors, with a blank page for a long time. And until finally I just had to bleed at the keyboard and actually start typing some stuff. And then it was about towards the end of 2022 when I said, okay, I have something here and I would like to try to do it. So I started reaching out to a couple writer friends I knew who had previously worked with some artists. And I came across one writer who worked with Santiago on a particular short miniseries. And I was like, hey, would he be interested in this? And reached out to him and we started talking and kind of got the ball rolling and committed to it. And then we started. So that was sort of like how it all came together.
Nice. So, real quick follow up, Jake, before I know you're itching to ask questions, but how long does it take for someone that's not, doesn't understand the back end of making a comic book, right? Like how long does it take to get, pages or something like that from your artist? Was it fast? Is it slow? Is there back and forth? How does that work?
I think it kind of comes in waves and batches. I mean, we're like a small team sort of putting it together and he's a busy artist and is probably juggling a lot of projects. And, I have more of like a, hey, what do you think kind of time frame, as far as like, what's a pace that sort of works for you? And we've kind of worked something out that he can deliver on. I suppose, if he was, really, really focused and we had to make a deadline and stuff, he maybe could do, a page every couple of days if that was the pace that he was working at. He also does the inking himself. But I think for him, he's really passionate about it. And thankfully, like he wants to put in as much, detail and effort into his work as he can. So he's kind of requested like, hey, can I take more time, like to turn around some of this stuff? And so we've kind of had like a slower pace on this, but I think like a page every couple of days is possible for some people. I think there's been times when we've done a page a week, and there's been times when he's taken a couple of weeks off because he has other projects to work on. So, it kind of just depends, but that's that process. And then coloring, maybe is a couple days as well for each page, and lettering, which is a little bit faster, but maybe a day or so.
Yeah, and the artwork is really awesome. And I was gonna say too, the color on it sets the mood and the tone, man, which is what you want, right? In the noir, but also gives you that hint of, there's something more than noir. It's like, the sci-fi, the horror element there, the Lovecraftian element there. So yeah, his artwork definitely led itself very well to the story. So
I've got so many questions, Jesus. I'm go ahead and why don't you mute yourself, Jesus?
All right, let me go ahead. Let me work on this FedEx package real quick.
Yeah, you do that. So Swags, I've got a few things. I do want to start by recognizing this current Kickstarter isn't necessarily just for issue number 2, but it is 2 and 3. And I wanted to ask first the distinction there, because you did number 1 as a standalone, and to like for you, and with the cliffhanger at the end, you knew there was more story, so you knew there would be more to tell. What was the thought process behind a standalone for the first one, and now coming back with 2 and 3 for the follow-up Kickstarter here?
Yeah, well, in truth, it was, this is my first kind of real foray into comic book writing, and especially under sort of my Swagglehaus YouTube umbrella. And so it was mostly an experiment. Like I wrote up through 6 issues and I've outlined through 12, and I know where I want to take the story. But, making a comic book is expensive. Like it's me coming out of my own pocket to produce this stuff and pay my artists and my team to produce all the materials and everything. So to me, it was just sort of like, hey, like I want to just get number one out there, and let's see what happens. Like, let's see if there's any interest. Let's see if will this Kickstarter even fund? Are there people going to, back it? Are they going to hate it? And so a lot of it was just a kind of mitigating the risk and just trying to see if there was any interest out there. So, doing number one and then being able to have it be funded, and then also just going through the process of like actually fulfilling it itself and making sure it's like, do I have the ability to get books into customers' hand, get this thing actually across the finish line? I don't want to bite off more than I can chew here.
Yeah.
And now that I did do number one, I was like, oh, okay, like I can totally do this. Like, let's get more story in people's hands faster. Let me commission 2 and 3 right away and get that done, and have that be the Kickstarter. And then once I fulfill this, my plan would be, okay, 4, 5, 6 to finish it. Next time around, just have those come out together so that people don't have to kind of wait for one by one. And that's kind of the thought process.
Now, you kind of jumped the gun on my next question, Mickey. I appreciate it. I would appreciate it if you kept your jumping the gun to a minimum here.
I apologize.
I was going to say that early on, I took a risk in the introduction, of course, and I called this an ongoing series. Maybe that was wishful thinking on my part to describe it in that way. But it sounds like 6 is the current arc, I guess, for the first arc. Is there room for more?
Yeah, I would call it that 6 is going to be the arc, that I'm definitely going to put a work towards and finish and put a bow on. I mean, ongoing is my desire to make it that. I have a lot of thoughts of like where I could go and everything, but again, a lot of it is a process and trying to crawl before I can run, and make sure that, hey, let me just get to 6 here. Let's make sure that we tell a great story, through 6 issues. And I have a lot of aspirations of where to take it after that. But that's kind of where I'm at with it right now.
Nice. Well, the next question, it was going to be sort of, as we have started calling these types of questions, but an inside baseball type question. Because you had mentioned your background in filmmaking and in Los Angeles, and you deal with many forms of entertainment. And you're writing with regards to screenplays and scripts. What was when you were getting into the writing of a script for a comic book? Because of my knowledge within the film industry, the way screenplays are written, it's a very unique and specific style of writing. Right, the description, the action, the way that scenes are built out within those screenplays, and comic books also very, very distinctly different in how they are written. So, not that all writers can't morph and change how they write, but for you, what was that process like? And is it still this work in progress, or do you feel like your brain can, today I'm writing screenplay, today I am writing comic book, and you can click that pretty quick?
Yeah, I definitely think that I have the ability to pivot, but you are right that it's definitely like kind of a different skill set and approach that you would have to it. With the screenplay, you're just trying to not necessarily give too much specific screen direction. With a screenplay, you're sort of describing a story, and I mean, there's little tricks and stuff that you can do to kind of get people who read the screenplay to envision it in a way that only the way you write it would be how they would envision it. If you, for instance, start a scene that says splash, we see a guy jump into a pool, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, splash. Like, okay, I kind of imagined a close up of the water exploding. And so you can kind of direct people into a way of envisioning it. And that's all you have as far as your screenwriting hand. But with comic books, I find that you have to kind of do a little more storyboard writing where you're saying, oh, here are the compositions, and I'm not so precious with saying, oh, it's a close up of this character, and then here are the lines. Like, how my artist wants to draw that close up, totally up to him. I'm not super precious unless it's like, no, we have to have it like this because the particular story requires this or whatever. But yeah, you are kind of doing more like storyboard drawing with it, and that changes things. And then also I found that once you put the comic together, and you see the layout and you start to letter it in, like now there's kind of this new revision process of like, okay, I understand that I like my words, but aesthetically, when I look at the page, do I like how there's too many words here? Like, do I like the layout? And so I find myself editing in that sense as well. So yeah, it's similar, but it's different, as far as the skill sets.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a complete. It's more of a project, I feel, right? Because you have to get the script, you have to get the artist, you have to get. Did you get a different letterer as well? I'm assuming, right? Yeah.
Yeah, different letter. I mean, same letter for all the issues, but different than the artist. Yeah.
Yeah. So letterer, and it's just like project managing at that point too, right? That you have to do, which is different from just straight writing, right? Like you're just straight writing. So yeah, so I think that's pretty interesting. And so one question I always ask all creators that come on here or Kickstarter asked, what's his name? Christoph.
Yep, Bogach.
I asked him. I think I asked. I forgot who else was on. That wasn't a Kickstarter. I've asked Mario a couple of times as well.
We had Mario Candelaria on.
Yeah, but I asked them, and I'll ask you. Like, obviously Kickstarter, and we've talked about this as well, right? Kickstarter and crowdfunding and Zoop and Backer Kit or something like that. They're all not necessarily new, but they're a new way to get comic books and your stories out. But at some point, I guess every creator has either this question or this, do I want to go to publishers? And so that's a question I'll pose to you. Did you want to go to a publisher with this? Did you go to publishers with this? Is that anything in the future that you're trying to do?
Yeah, I think for this particular story, I knew that I wanted to do Kickstarter first. I didn't necessarily try to take it to any publishers or pitch it. I can definitely see the advantages of working with a publisher as far as like, all the little things that a publisher can do, like adding a team element to it. I mean, in the Kickstarter world, you are left to your own devices as far as like, how is this thing going to get out there? How is it going to get marketed? Can I eventually get it to a comic book store? I mean, no one's going to do it for me. I just have to figure out like if I can get it there. So there's those pros and cons and stuff. But with this one, it felt like, I think this style of noir, sort of a ode to the vintage golden age era, is going to work well for maybe the people who are familiar with my YouTube. So I felt like, okay, Kickstarter seems like this is the way to go with this one. And but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to pitching other ideas to other publishers in the future.
Nice. Well, we are going to continue to discuss sanity throughout this entire episode, but we really should keep this ball rolling. Jesus, let's just say that was a solid 4.5 tater tots for your recent pickup this week.
I'm winning this one.
You would think, right?
Mark my words.
Now, Swagglehaus, is that German? What is that? Czech? It's a family name, I assume, right?
You would think that, but it's not. It's kind of like Haagen-Dazs. Like it sounds like it's a real word, but it's not actually. It's just made up. It's just a made up name that I got.
Swags, as many people call you, Swags. You're up? What is your recent pickup this week?
Yeah, I've been loving where we are in the comic market because I feel like there's lots of collections that are popping up in my LCSs recently, and you can just go and you always see good stuff. And I actually came across this book right here, which is a Werewolf by Night #1.
Ooh.
The first Werewolf by Night issue, and it's a nice copy. Probably like a VF. Price was right. I've never owned it before. I'd say that Werewolf by Night was probably like one of the better like Marvel projects I think that came out in Phase 4 as far as like, I know it was the short, one shot type of thing, but as far as what it was trying to do, I thought like they did a really, really good job with it. And yeah, it's cool. I feel like my taste buds are changing, with my comic book interests. I used to never like the Bronze Age comics with the window frame style. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It used to kind of annoy me, but now I've kind of gained a new appreciation for them. So it's cool. It's cool to find that one.
I like that book.
Yeah, that's a dope book, and I agree with you on that. Werewolf by Night. I feel like that one they like you mentioned, they were trying something, and I think I wouldn't say it was a home run, but it was definitely legit, like different and cool, black and white for most of it. Man Thing in there, which was just awesome.
Gotta love Man Thing.
Yeah, and yeah, it's pretty cool, and they haven't really done. Well, I mean, they did the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday thing, which was.
Well, here's my thought on the Werewolf by Night little, I don't know, special or whatever they're calling it. Something makes me feel like that special was no pun intended, but like made in the dark in some secret layer of Disney where like the higher ups were all so worried. They were up tinkering with, whatever the next major, Eternals and all of the films and things like that, the big ones, the tent poles that they were trying to come out with. And somebody in the back room was just like, hey, we're going to make Werewolf by Night. Is that okay? And they were just like, yeah, whatever. Just do what you want. We're over here. We're looking at the Marvels here. And then it came out and it was great. It was really cool. It looked like it was unscathed by whoever the higher ups were that were making poor decisions, because they said, you want to do it black and white? And it was like, yeah, of course you want to do Werewolf by Night in black and white. You want to make it all, classic monster movie style. And they did it. And it seemed like it was, like I said, untouched, made in some secret layer, and Marvel Marvel and Disney didn't even know it was out until it got released. They were like, "What? Wait, what? Oh,
what did we
nice.
just do?"
100%. It really did feel like these people were kind of like left to their own devices to like make something, and they set out to do a very specific type of 1 hour project, and not that it's like the most greatest Marvel thing ever been made in the history thing, but like as far as like what they set out to do, I think that they clearly accomplished what they wanted.
Can you imagine that coming out a decade ago though? Right? Oh. There was a small moment where Marvel had so much momentum because of after Endgame, there was so much momentum. There was so much like Marvel can do no wrong. And, DC was already like shitting the bed for the 100th time. And so Marvel just like, we've got all the money. We can do whatever we want. And somebody said, greenlight my Werewolf by Night project. And they said, sure. And then, a couple years later, it came out and it was so much fun. But you're right. Like, why, don't ask questions about why it came out or what their purpose was. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy it. And that's what it was. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely seems like that's like the best use of maybe the Disney Plus format. And so maybe they're going to do more of these kind of like just 1 hour special things, which I don't know if it's expensive for them to do that. Maybe they want to have like shows that can stretch out longer, but it seemed like it was a good use. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess.
It was like in one location, right? For the most part. So that's
true.
I'm assuming that was all done in a studio. It looks like it was all built and things like that. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, it was limited locations. I mean, most of the characters were monsters or some sort of but I thought it was great. I really do like that recent pickup. I think that's one to always. It's also a character that's not hot right now at all. So you can find all of those Werewolf by Night. You can find Marvel Spotlight #2, which is a really great pickup as well. I'm sad that I while Werewolf by Night was really expensive and hot, I ended up selling my copy because I like to help the hobby pay for itself. But ultimately, you get sad when you no longer have it. So I'll be trying to get another one of those. But Mickey, I'm going to go ahead. Listen, Mickey, I really like your pickup, but I can't rank Werewolf by Night #1 over Sanity. So
that's fair.
I got to go with a four tater tots for you.
I'll take it.
I'll take it. All right. So
still winning.
Yeah, no, Jesus is still.
Stop the count.
It's a runaway. Stop the count now. Yeah, this is going to be a runaway. So I have a recent pickup. This is something that was sent to us by a listener, Abbotsford comic fan, one of our longest listeners. He's been with us literally since the beginning. I have no idea why he keeps listening all the way up from Canada, Abbotsford, Canada, Alberta. Is it Alberta? I think it's Alberta. And he's actually Mickey. He's a really good friend of Chris, Vancouver Comic Junkie.
Oh, nice.
Our good friend Chris. I think Chris is the one who turned him onto the show, to be honest. Well, we owe him a great thanks. But every once in a while, he will send us kind of a care package. Now, Jesus, this is a 2 for a care package, and I do this. Actually, this might be a good bartering tool because I need to send you half of this. But maybe I'll do it in exchange for half of what you have.
Mine's already in the mail. Mine's already in the mail.
Did you already get to the FedEx? So there's 2 halves to this. I'm going to show and he sent it. He sent these to us because we talked about them on the show. And I told him that I really need to start talking about more expensive books. So, but no, all joking aside, this is pretty incredible. And I really wanted to bring it up. So we're gonna talk real quick here about this 9.8 Chew number 1.
That's dope.
So Image Comics from 2009. He said that he just I can't remember. He had messaged and he was like, "Hey, you guys talked about this," and I randomly found it. I think he just found it he knew he had it in an old box that had been sitting around or something. I don't know. He just was like, "Oh yeah, I have that," and I'll send it to you guys. And this also, dope. By the way, I know I made a joke earlier. This is not exactly a cheap book. You go on eBay right now, see how much that's going for, because it is. This is Jesus. I went out and read the first issue after you recommended it on the show. It's so good. Also disgusting. Mickey, I don't know if you're familiar, but basically Chew is a detective, and he can. Jesus, you the way you described it might have been better, but essentially he can see what happened to somebody who got murdered by eating some of their body, right? Like cannibalism. Like if he and the more he eats, the more he finds out about how they were murdered. And it's so cool, but also disgusting. But obviously that's our jam.
Yeah.
It all makes sense now. Now I understand why it's called Chew.
Yeah.
But the double entendre.
Exactly. Yeah. But his name is Chew, but I think it's spelled differently.
Yeah, it's spelled CHU in there, I think.
So that was, if that wasn't cool enough. And Jesus, here's the funny thing. I'm going to give you the choice of which one of these books you want, because that's how hard of a decision this is going to be for you. This also timely, also recently spoken about on the show. This is Dragon Ball Z number 1.
Oh shit!
Nice,
son of a bitch.
So upset over our good fortune. Story and art by Akira Toriyama, and this is timely, of course, because Toriyama recently passed away. So, sad and unfortunate, and we, are a friend of the show. Somebody that we're looking forward to talking to again very soon. Andre Lima Araujo is a huge fan.
We just talked to.
Or we just talked to. Wait. Oh, maybe. You're right. We'll edit that out. Nobody will know.
Time travel, guys. Time travel.
It is possible. Anyway, this is first print, super clean. I am not lying to you when I say that this is a contender, right? For a very high grade. And Jesus, look at us. We are so lucky to have
no, seriously, just
incredible. This is somebody who listens to us weekly. We should be sending him thank you cards on a daily, right? And somehow he decided to send us stuff. So we're gonna have to repay you, and Jesus and I will come up with an adequate response.
Yeah, for sure. To me, it never fails to amaze me. That stuff when somebody just sends some stuff to us. I think I could think of all the times it's happened, and it's just really cool. Like you said, we're just 2 friends talking about comic books on here and trying to collect some Grail tales for everybody. And those are some awesome books, man. I can't believe that he would just send them in like that. So obviously, thank you and super appreciative. And I'll take both of them. So thank you for that.
But no, both of them weren't on the table.
Those weren't the rules. So I thought you were showing me
right?
what you're sending to me, since I already sent you that.
I see how that goes. Well, so after all that is said and done with the recent pickups here, folks, which, by the way, I think I just realized that we're like 45 minutes into recording and we only made it through the first segment. We got to get better at our jobs.
A little rusty right now.
But we can't not give out the final tater tots. And it's always so hard when this happens, but I'm just so glad that I'm not the judge, that I get these notes from the judges over here. And they awarded me 5 tater tots for the recent pickups this week, just barely edging out Jesus's 4.5. And Mickey, I want you to know, this is not, I didn't make that decision.
Listen,
I will take the award though, for the.
I am humble. I'm humbled in defeat, but I couldn't have been more amazed by those special gifts that were sent to you guys. I mean, I think they're very, very worthy. As much as I enjoyed Jesus's pick of my own comic book, I think those are definitely deserving 5 stars.
Well, as we can all tell, this is rigged. It's a sham. The judges are in Jake's house. He obviously wined and dined them before he came on. I mean, that's obvious, right? And nobody needs, but whatever. We'll accept it because it is an awesome gift. But also, Sanity's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we're gonna talk about it.
Exactly. Now, everybody who listens, you already know what comes next, but I still have to press this button so that everybody else knows.
Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale.
That's right, the Grail Tale segment. And this is the one where we're going to ask Mickey. So, Mickey, you have been on before. You gave us your Grail Tale. Everybody, we do recommend you go back to episode 26 and give it a good listen. Put it in your ear holes, let it wash around in there. But spoiler alert, Mickey's Grail Tale has changed.
Dun, dun, dun.
No, honestly, so you came on the first time and you had an Avengers #1, which is still a grail of a grail of a grail.
It's on my list for sure.
And so how dare you, Mickey, replace that book with another grail? I don't even know what would trump it. That you're going to explain yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'll have to, share a couple. There's been some grails since the last time that I've been on the show, but as much as I love the Avengers 1, there's another team that has a first appearance that I also wanted to add to my collection, and this particular grail is my tale about me picking up an X-Men #1, 1963 X-Men #1 team. Now,
there were a lot of teams. There were a lot of teams you could go with. I thought maybe you were going with Alvin and the Chipmunks or Scooby-Doo.
That's on the list. It's on the list, but I had to prioritize characters like Magneto and Cyclops.
Oh,
and Professor X. Some people you've maybe heard of before, but. Yeah, this one's it's a tale. It's a cautionary tale, and it's actually something that happens, later on my YouTube channel. I shared this situation on my YouTube channel probably sometime not too far after when I was last on the podcast with you guys, but because it did happen at the end of 2022. But I was very much in the market to pick up an X-Men 1. It was a book that I had on my list, so I started to do the things where. I'm looking at auction houses. I'm following listings. I'm starting to put the feelers out. And on Instagram, I decided to follow grails for sale type of hashtags, X-Men #1 for sale hashtags, things like that. So these were things that were in my feed, and every day I would sort of check some of the hashtags and see if hey, maybe one popped up. And sure enough, one day an X-Men 1 did pop up from an account that looked more like a sports card seller, but looked like a seller. Seemed pretty, respectable account. And a lot of people that I knew personally on Instagram also followed that account and had some interactions and things like that. And some people that I knew also were inquiring about this X-Men one. So I thought like, okay, maybe this is a good candidate. Let me reach out to this particular Instagram person. And I started talking to him, and we had an exchange back and forth. And I asked him, hey, are you also open to doing a trade? And he actually said that he was. So, we kind of went back and forth and decided to do a trade. And I put together a bunch of other grails to make it up. I had like a Marvel Spotlight 5. I had like a Fantastic Four 49 and a 52. So I had some good books in there that I was trying to equal the value to the X-Men #1 and, engage with this trade. And so we went back and forth, and, everything was looking pretty good. It was looking pretty good. We agreed to some terms, and we decided that after getting on the phone and talking about it, we decided that, hey, we'll ship the books together. We'll have it, we'll do tracking and exchange information, and I'll send the books and you send that back to me, or I'll send mine to you and you send that to me. So everything seemed okay and hunky dory. So that day I sent out my books, packed them all up, put them in the post office, shipped it out to him. He said that he shipped it out to me, took some pictures, like sent me the package, got the tracking number. And, in a few days, I was going to have an X-Men 1 in my collection. A few days go by, and it's supposed to be the morning of the day in which my package arrives to me. And all of a sudden, I noticed that the tracking, which had been making its way across the country, all of a sudden got like a red flag error on it for USPS. And I was like, oh, what does this mean? And so, I gave him a call, and he said, oh, I don't know what's going on, whatever, maybe call USPS. Called USPS, and they said, oh, the package is actually being returned to sender, and we can't say anything more than that. And I was like, oh, that's very, very strange. Return to sender. Flash forward, he gets my books. They show up to him. I get on the phone with him. He's like, oh, I don't know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. He's kind of giving me what I would later realize is kind of the runaround. But he's telling me that, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll figure this out. Like, I'll resend the books. And after about a day, which I was kind of hoping that he would get back to me with information, he wouldn't pick up my calls anymore. He kind of stopped answering my DMs, all that sort of stuff. And sooner or later, I sort of realized, oh, like this guy scammed me. Like he got my books. Like he never meant to send it over. And that's when I realized, like, oh yeah, I've totally been scammed, And so I ended up on my YouTube channel making a video, kind of explaining that I got scammed, and sort of put the word out to the masses, out there, that was like, hey, here are the books that I sent. Here are their like specific grades and damages. If anyone happens to see them pop up, the guy happened to be in the Chicago area. I was like, hey, if anyone sees them pop in the Chicago area, please let me know. And that video definitely went fairly viral for what the normal views on my YouTube get. And it absolutely, took like fire within that specific part of the comic book community. And eventually someone ended up finding my comic books listed for sale under some like accounts and stuff like that. So it became this like whole thing, a big like, oh, these books are out there, and what's going on, and can we find the scammer? And everyone was playing detective in the community, and it was all a lot of fun at the time. I mean, kind of fun. I mean, I was pretty upset about my books.
Yeah, of course.
But eventually, this person who had the books listed for sale, turns out, plot twist, that actually wasn't the scammer, that the scammer had actually offloaded my books to this other guy who went to quickly flip them on, I forget what it was.
Conveniently enough. Yeah,
Facebook Marketplace, Mercari, whatever. And again, we're taking him, the guy who is selling them, at his word. To this day, I still don't know if he was in on the scam or what the deal was. He ended up taking the books down after probably getting a lot of hateful comments from people who watch my YouTube channel, which I don't condone, but I could tell that he felt a wave of people attacking him. And then we eventually got on the phone and talked about the whole situation. The story gets crazier. There was some sting operation stuff that kind of went in with it. Shout out to Diamond Club, the Instagram page, for helping me with that. And I kind of told him the story, the guy who had my books, and he was unwilling to send them to me. So we kind of reached a stalemate because he didn't really feel like he owed me his books because he bought them from the scammer. And like my thing was, well, this your issue is with the scammer. Like those are still my books. Like if someone stole,
property.
if someone stole the Mona Lisa, just because you bought it, like doesn't mean you get to keep it, So those are those types of things. So I ended up doing like a full police report, detective, filing, cybercrime, USPS. I did it all. I did it all. I hired a private investigator who, did some inspections of this person. He got some traction. I did get on call with a detective over in Chicago who, was sympathetic to my case, but at the same time, my file was probably buried under like 20 murder cases. So my $6,000 worth of comic books is not really a priority for him. And unfortunately, nothing ever really came of it. It's still sort of ongoing. My private investigator didn't quite have the investigative skills that the detective in my comic book had. He did what he could, but he couldn't quite, fully solve the case there. And so things kind of fizzled out. I'm not really sure where my comic books with that particular seller who has them are now, but it kind of wrapped up where the guys, I think his Instagram account ended up getting like banned by Instagram, got reported, and everyone kind of flooded his account. And that's kind of where that part of the story ended. And I got to say, like, it was definitely a sad time for me, with comic books. Like once you get scammed, and I think that this is like where maybe other people can relate to, this part of the story is once you get scammed, it can definitely put a damper on any joy you have in the hobby. And you're kind of like quickly reminded like, oh yeah, like there's a lot of money here. There's some unscrupulous people in the hobby. These types of things happen. People get stuff stolen. I mean, every comic book show always has people stealing comic books. And as someone who makes comic book YouTube content, those next like 2 months or so were like, I was just kind of going through it. I was like, I really don't care about comic books all that much, but I'm going to do a video because that's what I do. This is my channel. So I was pretty down and out about it. But eventually, I was like, I think if I find an X-Men one, even though I'm out of these books, I think that can put a bow on at least this side of it. So I went back to hunting. I was persistent. I kept looking. And eventually, on Heritage Auctions, one X-Men one rolled around. It was Christmas time, around that time. And I kind of made up my mind, okay, if it sells at this price, I'm gonna buy it. And sure enough, it was right by Christmas time, and maybe I got lucky and people weren't really watching it at that moment, but I ended up putting in the bid. I ended up winning it, got the X-Men one. I had to buy it the old fashioned way. Didn't quite work out with a trade, but I will say that when I eventually got the book back, it really did kind of close the somber chapter to me. Like I felt like, okay, you know what? That happened. That sucked. But now that I have this book, I feel some spark of, enjoyment with my comic book collecting once again. And so that was my kind of grail tale, and maybe a cautionary tale to some people out there that, if you're doing these trades and you're buying grails online with people, vetting is super important. I was maybe a little too trusting of an account that I just perceived to be real and official. And even though I knew people that were following him and presumably interacting with him, I should have messaged people and said like, hey, Jesus, have you ever actually worked with this guy? You know who he is, etc. Because just because people follow each other on Instagram doesn't mean that they actually know these people. So yeah, that was my little grail tale. And now I have my X-Men one and I got my Avengers one. So I have, the two teams that I need, for my love of teams.
Well, you're just missing the Fantastic Four. Is all.
Yeah, that's true. That's the next one.
Not to point out a giant gap in your.
That's the next episode. Books. Yeah, by the time I come back some other time around, I'll have to get the teams.
But definitely cautionary tale. Jake was the first one to trade, I guess, in the show. I guess, right? It was one of our early episodes. I recently started trading. I only have one trade partner. Shout out Ron from Norris Comics Books, because he's always finding some cool stuff and wanting to trade me. And I'm like, yeah, man, we'll do a trade. I just recently did a trade with him, which I'll talk about at a later time. I let go of some books and I got a book that I never thought I was going to get in. It's a little bit lower grade, but it's really cool. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I only have one trading partner is because there's not a lot of trust there, man. It's just very difficult, and having to vet people and things of that nature, and be ability, like, it's part of the community. Trading is part of the community. That's how you get big books. That's how people move big books sometimes, because they can't sell a big book, so they trade for a smaller book so that they can sell those, and then that person gets the big book, right? Like, it's part of it, and it's cool. I think it's cool because it's a way that you can always have, at least for some, quote unquote bigger books, ability to be within arm's length of them, right? If you get enough of the smaller books that the person wants, you can get that book. Obviously, not a lot of people are trading for, Tech 27 or what, Amazing Finance 15, stuff like that. But the other ones are out there, right? Like, you can get an X-Men one, you can get an Avengers one, you can get a Fantastic Four #1. You can get some of these books if you trade, and even, if that person was legitimate, they would have gotten a Marvel Spotlight #5, stuff like that. Like, it's out there and it's part of the community, but you do have to be careful, because you can end up, out of your books that you worked hard for and you worked hard to get, that became your books, that became your PC, that were going towards something else for your PC. So definitely, and the part of it too, I think the bow on it when you got yours, no matter how you got it, is that it was like your white whale for that time, right? You had it in your grasp, right? You had it in your grasp, maybe for 3 or 4 hours. Fantastic Four number. Oh, I'm sorry, that's me.
No,
It's still my white whale. I still have not received that book back. But yeah, it becomes your white whale, and the only way to close that chapter is to get that book, and then you feel like you didn't slip your hands. Like, you got it. This is yours. This was meant to be, and now it's in your PC. So definitely cautionary tale, but also at the same time, it sucks that you're out those books, but you still got your X-Men one at a good price that you were happy with, and now you can say you have your X-Men one, which is really awesome.
Yeah. I want to say that well, Swags, I when you had messaged me briefly about the scenario, we were talking about your Grail Tailor, doing an update, and you had mentioned this situation. Honestly, I had forgotten that this happened to you, but I do remember when it happened, and because you talked about it on your show on YouTube, so I remember when that happened, and we're in a few chat groups that are the same, and we all have conversations together. Something though that I wanted to point out that I really do think still is a cool part about the community. Jesus and I met through Instagram, comic book Instagram. Hey, that's how Jesus and I met. That's how I met Ryan. That's literally how I've met 90% of the comic friends that I have. You would think you would meet them at your local comic shop. That's not true. I've met most of my comic friends just through Instagram and social media. And one thing you can be sure of within the comic community on Instagram, at the very least, is they really crave justice. They try as hard as they can. When somebody is dishonest, like that's the first, like I will get messages from people I don't talk to that are like, this person's a scammer, don't trust their account. And I'll be like, all right, I'll block that person, I guess. I don't know. It's just, I'll just, this random, not random accounts, but like other comic accounts that I've had interactions with in the past, whether it's a previous listener or just people that it's funny. You can literally go on Instagram and get into the comics community. Any one of those individuals that you can message them being like, hey, what do you think about this comic? And you will have an entire conversation with that person, not knowing their first name, not knowing what they look like. It doesn't matter. They're comic fans. You can figure it out. You'll chat with them. And the way that the community, like you had pointed out, like kind of circled around you and then also tried to help. They all want vengeance. They want justice. All of them see the heroes within the stories they're reading, and then they hear something bad happen to a friend of theirs, a comic friend, and all they want to do is just grind that villain's bones into the ground. And I think that is something very, very cool within the community. And I know if anything like this were to happen to any one of our other friends, we would all do the same thing, right? If Ryan got scammed and Ryan was like, we're picking up our pitchforks and we're going after this person, everybody on this call would just be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it right now. 100%. So I know that rightfully so, you were in a bad place because of what had happened to you. But was there some was there something that was in you that was like really warmed by how much the community went and backed you up?
Oh yeah, it was an incredible feeling. It was just surprising, just how much people rallied. Just to support, me and my, YouTube channel or what, value they get from the YouTube channel. They're just like supportive of like Swagglehaus, the content creator. But then also like you said, I think there is so much of this hobby success is built on like individual trust between people buying, selling, trading. And like you said, the community has to watch out for each other. So even if people didn't have a relationship, to me specifically, what's wrong is wrong, and the comic community really wants to weed out like the bad actors and the bad apples from, our hobby, because there's a lot of money in this stuff and in this hobby that we love. And there's a lot of like I already said, trust that has to happen, for a lot of these transactions to happen. And if nobody trusts anybody online, then it's going to make it much harder for everyone to get their whatever collecting goals that they have. So I was really, really humbled and overwhelmed, and just felt incredible from the support and outreach that I got. Like even just the people in the small thing, just saying, hey, let me know if I can help. Like, let me know, or here's this thing that I found, or hey, here, call this number for this detective office, or hey, I'm in Chicago. If you want me to check any LCSs, like I'm happy to do that. So just the outreach was just amazing from people.
I'm really glad that they did, and I'm sorry to hear that happened. We haven't officially like talked in a recording sense about it, but I'm really sorry. I know that that can kind of put a blemish on your wanting to trade or being willing to and things like that. But the community itself, I've had positive trades with people I barely knew, and trading for big books. So that's how I got my Hulk 181, and I traded I think 6 books. I think it was 6. Now it's been a couple of years since I did it. I believe it was 6 books, and the thing is they were the most valuable 6 books I basically had in my collection at that time. Now, one of them was an Avengers 48, which at the time I think it was valued at about $2,000, and now that same book in that same grade is probably valued at less than half of that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. I used it to my advantage at that moment. But the thing you're trading for a Hulk 181. But that individual that traded me, I think they were a reseller, so they were immediately going to put those for sale. And if they were making any of those smaller sales at that time, I mean, they still came out good.
Yeah.
But the thing is I was trading like the 6 most valuable books in my collection, or 6 of the most valuable. So if that would have happened to me, where it would have gone wrong, I mean, I would have been devastated just as much. So, cautionary tale. It's a cautionary Grail tale, and this one still, I guess we'll call it a happy ending. Mickey, I'm going to say it was a happy ending because I think a sad ending is bad for the show.
It was a happy ending, and like you said, I mean, careful out there on Instagram, but also, like you said, you meet some of the best people on Instagram. So if there's listeners out there that are not on Instagram, I think you should do it. I think you won't regret joining that community.
Yeah, I think it's a net positive for sure.
Absolutely, it is. Well, guys, we are down to our last segment, and it's one of my favorites. Speculation. This one is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. This is the speculation segment where we're going to talk about some way you can help the hobby pay for itself. Because sometimes in order to get a Hulk 181, you got to trade 6 other books to get there. And we're going to talk about which books you should trade right now to get a Hulk 181. No, But we are going to talk about some books or some collectibles, something that might have some future value here. Jesus, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll definitely go first. I'm just doing some last minute research here. But I mean, I already have.
You already know what it is.
Yeah, so I have it here. So I if anybody's a Patreon, you guys are gonna know about this book. But I posted it. I wanted to read something, and I saw the best Batman analogs out there, and Nemesis by Mark Millar was one of them. I could not find for the life of me the original one from 2010, but I found this reloaded one, and the reloaded one was really good. I mean, it has its quirks and certain things, but basically, what if Batman was a crazed psychopath instead of if he was taught by all the ruthless gangs and the bad people instead of the good people, right? Like, what if he had that instilled in him instead of almost like a Dexter, right? Like Dexter was the bad guy and but the dad saw him, so he tried to use that for good as it could be. Well, this guy's just a bad guy, and he had all the money to become a bad version of Batman. So it's Nemesis. So this is the reloaded one that I read. It's in a trade, but the original one came from 2010. Mark Millar. It's selling for about $15 right now. It's really low. There's 4 variants. I think a second, third, and fourth printing, and also a variant itself that's really cool. It was optioned in earlier, and in 2021, Netflix was supposed to be producing it. So obviously that's the comic boom, but there's obviously some smoke there, especially with Mark Millar having I think he has an overall deal with Netflix. He hasn't had too many hits there. I think Jupiter's Legacy kind of hurt. I think also
I don't want to put a damper on it, but I think Jupiter's Legacy and its failure on Netflix actually killed Millar's deal.
Oh, okay. Well,
I can't remember if it officially killed it or if they just said we're gonna take a breather on Mark Millar.
Well, I know something else of his came out after that, but it was in animated form. I think it was called Super Crooks or something like that. Came out of his. Let me see.
Not familiar with that.
Exactly. that makes it not the greatest either. But I mean, there's still some. I think there's still some legs on it just because of what it is and what it was. A lot of people like it. It predates this is like a Batman and Joker if they were in one as well. So it predates the Batman Who Laughs as well, 2010 compared to 2017. It's really cool, man. It's really cool. It's really interesting. It's done well. I enjoyed it. I mean, there's just like I'll show you guys this one right here. Like,
I mean, the art is incredible.
Yeah,
it's a sword.
Awesome.
So he has swords. Which is pretty dope.
Now, Jesus, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I mean I understand this is a spec book for you, but from a reading standpoint, I think this is right now free to read if you have Comixology. Is that correct? I think this is just available.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean,
really?
Yeah.
No, I thought I
Is
just
it on there?
had seen. Maybe I bought it. I can't
You
remember.
probably bought
I
it
know
because-
it's on my Comixology. I guess I just assumed it was free to read, but maybe I bought it and I just haven't. I haven't read it. Spoiler alert. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, it's
but it is.
$9.89 on the Kindle Comixology.
Sorry, everybody. That's my bad. My bad.
Yeah,
Alright.
it's hard to find. It really is hard to find. The original one from 2010 is hard to find. That's why I had to get the 2022, which is reloaded, and it's basically a reboot of the original character with more modern and relevant themes and features, and there's a lot more modern and relevant. Some of it worked, some of it kind of didn't work for me, but overall, it was an interesting read and a cool character. So still, I plan on getting the 2010 if I can find it. I'm not gonna go looking for it like online, but if I find it in one of my local LCSs, I'm gonna pick it up. And also the variant of it. There's a really cool variant that I like that also kind of predates the battle. Well, I mean, yeah, the battle. What is it called? Battle damage, invincible kind of stuff. Kind of looks like that almost.
Okay.
This is
and Invincible. Talk about a good show right now, by the way, guys.
This is the variant.
The latest couple of episodes that have come out have been phenomenal.
So $2.99 at the time. So it's Steve McNiven and Mark Millar. And the other thing about this book too, sorry, I forgot. I'm sorry, we're going a little bit on. We were talking about earlier, this was only done initially in 2010 as a 4-issue or 5-issue miniseries, and that was it. That was all that was planned for it. That's all he wanted to do with it. He just wanted to tell that story if, Batman was this instead of that, right? And it was one of his best-selling books. It's the book that he signs the most. It went to, I think, 3 or 4 printings.
Oh, really?
He said before it's his most popular IP in his mind and from what he sees, and it hasn't been adapted. So I'm saying there's some juice there.
Hasn't been adapted yet.
There you go.
Nice. All right. Well, very cool. Good recommendation. Now, Mickey, do you know much about speculation?
A little bit. I'd like to think so. Otherwise, I'm screwed.
No, I'm just joking. Yeah, no, you're up next, Mickey. What are you thinking?
All right, mine's a little bit of a cheat because it's not a specific book. I just want to shout out a character, and it's almost so obvious that it's a terrible choice. But I gotta say, I feel like the entire comic book market is sleeping on Superman. I just think everyone forgets that Superman is the flagship superhero. And I know that hasn't been the case for a long time. Maybe Spider-Man has taken over. Maybe Batman has taken over. Certainly there's more Batman collectors, and it's not up to me to decide who should be more popular. But I don't know. I think Superman is the OG for a reason. I think that we have the, James Gunn Superman movie coming out. And I just think that there's probably a lot of great Superman keys that people are just kind of overlooking, as far as like that speculation is concerned. I mean, you can go to the early Golden Age Supermans, just 1 through 20. I mean, obviously Superman 1's not really a spec book, but some of those Golden Age Supermans, they don't sell for the same price as, say, like the early Batman counterparts. And I think that there's probably a lot of good books in there that if the movies come out and everyone remembers like, oh yeah, Superman is so awesome, then
it's like the easiest bandwagon to get on, right? Like because it's that train is always rolling. It's just a matter of when you're getting on or off that train. But I don't disagree with you. I personally have always been more of a Batman fan. And I'm the guy who told Mark Waid that Superman wasn't relatable. I will apparently wear that the rest of my life, but yeah. I still stand by it. But in general, though, it was that was coming from a place of just loving Batman, and there does seem to be this unnecessary rivalry between the reader, like Batman being better than and it's weird because Superman could easily destroy Bruce Wayne or Batman in a fight unless Batman had time to prepare, right? Like that's the whole, and it's such a great line. But I don't disagree with you, and it's funny, I know way more of the early Batman covers than I do Superman covers.
Yeah,
I just don't know them off the top of my head.
I think the early Batman covers probably are a little cooler aesthetically, but there's some cool Superman ones in there. And
the Rogues Gallery really helps Batman in that.
Totally. Yeah, totally. But I just kind of feel like, with Batman, we got our Nolan Batman, there's been better executions, and not that like Henry Cavill was bad, but like, as far as like a string of movies where you felt like you got a complete story with Superman that was well done, like we haven't quite had that. And I just wonder, like, what would that look like, if James Gunn hits the grand slam with it, So that's kind of my pick. But yeah, it's a big if. It's a big if, but that's kind of my pick. I mean, you can pick your poison. I'm sure there's modern Superman stuff that people love. There's Neil Adams Superman covers in Bronze Age that are cool, and that's just the character I kind of go with.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I think the hardest thing is I don't know what it was, but like in the 80s and 90s, you had the really hot artists like McFarlane choosing to do Batman and choosing to do Spider-Man, and those characters, especially during the last few decades, have dominated the box office, have dominated popular pop culture, and have been portrayed by more people than any other character. But the thing being is, like, Superman is still getting those A-list creators, right? I think that the challenge has always been, I would say I've always thought that Superman is the most difficult character to write of the superheroes. And maybe the challenge was just, it's such that they thought they needed to reinvent Superman to give him a new blue suit in the 90s, or, where he looked like he was electrical or something, and all of that stuff just kind of makes it maybe easier to forget. To me, this is why it does actually fit as a speculation. I don't think you're off on that at all. And it's also fun because for some individuals, me being one of them, you can go and rediscover. It's a whole character to go rediscover if you have been paying more attention to Spider-Man and Batman the last few decades.
Yeah, totally.
For what it's worth. All right, nice. Well done. Mine is, I think, I'd like to go with an overlooked character, one that is not far from the spotlight by any means, but one that when we talked about the MCU, we talked a little bit about Marvel and how, like Werewolf by Night was somehow just made in the basement while they were focusing on other stuff. One of the other characters that, a lot of people liked the movie. Now, Mickey, I don't recall what your stance was on this. I know it's come up in the chats. I think maybe you were an anti Shang-Chi. I can't remember how you felt about the movie, but I actually thought it was actually one of the more well executed. I like the action sequences. I thought it was a good story. The family dynamic within the story was great. And I also thought that it left it in a place where I do want to see more, right? If you're looking at in the last 5 years or since Endgame, how many of the films did you come out of saying, yeah, I want to see a sequel to that? And for me, Shang-Chi was really the main one where I came out of it going, if there was a sequel, I'd go see the sequel. I want to see what happens next with the character. And we know that Shang-Chi is coming back. I mean, Shang-Chi's first appearance, I always want to say Marvel Special Edition, but it's Special Marvel Edition 15. I mean, at one point, so I've owned multiple copies of this book, and oh my God, Ryan, I love Ryan's take on this. Ryan would just buy and sell this book crazy because he did not care for the book. He was just, the market was nuts at one point, right? I think 8.5s, CGC 8.5s were going for, $1,200 or $1,500 or some, crazy number. And it's just hilarious to me, though, because now that same 8.5, which was going for well over $1,000, an 8.5, you can do or best offer on eBay right now. It's $309 or best offer, meaning they'll do it for cheaper, everybody. But listen, to me, this is a character I actually do like. I like the cover. I think that, the Master of Kung Fu, the green and the yellow and the red and all the colors, I really like the cover. This is one that I do enjoy having in the collection. But this is one that it's a very cheap book from a 1973 Marvel character, leading character in an MCU film type of thing. I know everybody just wanted to just shit on Phase 4. And just said, nah, we're done with all those characters. Shang-Chi's coming back. They're not getting rid of him, everybody. He's going to be a main character moving forward. He's going to be an Avenger, right? Like, hey, speculation wise, I think Ryan's approach to this book is still valid. Pick them up when they're cheap, and you can sell them when they're hot, because they will be again. I think they will be. I don't know if they'll be as hot as they were before. That was a little bit of a bump in the market, but I do see that as a book that people were just like, they couldn't have thrown him out faster, apparently.
Yeah, I've been seeing rumors that he's going to be exactly what you mentioned before, which was the new Captain America on, not like the mantle. I'm just saying like that character's role inside of the Avengers is going to be Shang-Chi. So,
yeah. I think, like you said, I mean, just pointing out the fact that 309 best offer for an 8.5. I mean, like,
yeah,
how much lower could it go at this point? So it's like,
I mean,
you're pretty fairly safe, I would have to imagine. I mean, at the end of the day, you won't lose too much. But like you said, we're going to see him again. So we started the pod with just talking about how we've lived through the cycles now in content world, and you just know, like, what's going to happen. Like, as soon as he rolls back around, you get another trailer again, people get excited once again. For sure, that book will, the sun will shine on it at some point, and people will definitely FOMO back into it. I will say that, like it wasn't my favorite movie when I saw it at the time, but it was all relative, right? Because at the time, that was when my expectations were still like, hey, where's our Endgame level of movies? Now with new information, I'm like, well, in comparison to some of the other stuff, that movie actually maybe wasn't that bad. So, but I think for sure, like you said, we're going to see him again. He's going to make many, many appearances, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that book.
And again, I do want to come back to with a lot of books there where there's this FOMO and everybody buys it. Sometimes books hit on FOMO and it's just the ugliest damn cover. And I was like, don't buy that book, because otherwise you're stuck. Like if the bottom falls out, you're stuck with an ugly book. That's not an ugly book, right? Like, it is I personally think it's one of the cooler covers. It's all black. It's hard to get in a high grade because of the black cover.
Yeah, totally.
But it's a cool book. I like that one. And I do think it is a cool cover. So one of those things to keep in mind with regards to all speculation. When I spec on a book, I do also kind of judge a book by its cover. I know you're not supposed to, but you do. And if it's a cover that's, badass, right? Like the first Man-Thing, by the way, I bring it up all the time. The cover, Savage Tales #1. Yeah. Own it for the cover alone. Man-Thing's not on the cover. It's just an incredible book. Awesome cover. Conan cover. Conan the Barbarian, not the late night host. But great covers kind of transcend a little bit. I know the market will fluctuate, but if you're stuck with either of these books, stuck in quotes, you're not out much. It's a great thing to have in the collection. So that's my speculation, everybody. And that actually brings us to a close on the episode, but I want to circle back on Sanity. Let's talk about that one more time so we make sure. You are currently, Mickey, doing a Kickstarter for book 2 and 3. You have tiers. We are proud supporters of this Kickstarter. We are backing it. We backed the first one and we're backing this one as well. And you've got tiers for every level and tiers that help people catch up. Everybody who supports this Kickstarter, even at the lowest level, I believe, gets the first issue. Is that correct?
It doesn't come with the first issue, but you can get the first issue.
You can add
with your pledges and stuff. But yeah, there's plenty of ways to catch up. Different tiers out there, different price points, and hopefully, if people get a chance to check it out and they're interested in the genre, it might be something for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that we are supporters, and we were supporters at the beginning, and I get to finish. Well, not finish, but continue this story. Also, real quick, I know. So there was some time in between the first one and the second Kickstarter. Now having a second successful Kickstarter, what does the time frame look like going forward on these?
Yeah, I think this one last time we were able to kind of fulfill faster than what we said that we wanted to do. I just wanted to make sure that I kind of gave myself that wiggle room. hopefully we can fulfill this one, maybe a few months after the Kickstarter closes. We've already done a lot of the heavy work with it. So most of the book really just has to kind of get the finishing touches, the finishing letters, and then, sent off to the printer and all those types of bells and whistles put on it. And we're kind of rolling on the issues after that. So in an ideal world, I would finish this Kickstarter and sometime by the end of the year have the final one that kind of gets the rest of the book out. So that's what I'm looking at.
Nice.
No, and that's good to know for the listeners so that they can sort of make a few of their decisions now as far as backing and knowing when it's going to kind of come through. Are you saying though you already have the next 3 books? You have them written and already in production?
They're already written, yeah, and they've started being drawn. Yes.
Nice. All right. Well, great. Yeah, definitely. We're gonna have a link in the show notes for the Kickstarter, so you can go. The Kickstarter is going from now through April 17th, correct? That's April 17th is the end of that. So you'll want to get in on it so that you can certainly you can call yourself a Kickstarter and that you got in on the ground floor. Because I personally speaking, knowing Mickey and knowing the quality that he brings to everything he does, both his YouTube and his comic book and everything that he does professionally, this is so well made. I genuinely think either this or whatever else you do after this is going to be picked up. I think that you do high quality stuff, Mickey, and I think that not just shows through, but I think is going to shine through in a world where, yeah, there are a lot of Kickstarters and there's a lot of comic books out there, but the quality of what you're producing means we're going to see a lot more from you. And Jesus and I are just going to continue to proudly wear that badge of honor that we had you before you were comic book famous.
Thank you so much for saying that, and I appreciate you guys having me on the show. This was a pleasure. It's an honor for me, and maybe I'll be back once again 2 years from now.
Yeah, with another Grail Tale. But remember, happy endings. It sells more books.
Not a cautionary one. Not a cautionary one next time.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this long but still fun episode of Spec Tales. A little bit long on this, but we're not going to apologize for that. We will see you all again next week. Until then, have a good week and help somebody else have a good week.